Hello and welcome to another episode of Unscripted on the Sofa with Flavio
And Mark.
So, today we're going to talk about 5 pictures that Mark has taken. I'm going to quiz you about these pictures and ask what your thought process was, what the pictures are about and how they work. So, I think...
Don't go too tough on me.
It's going to be quite easy.
Okay.
So,
let's go for it.
Let's go for it. So, let's start with the fact that we are talking about something that is called layering in street photography. Those pictures have been chosen mostly because they do have some layering going on in those pictures. So let's start with random hands. This picture. Tell us what the thought process was, how you set this picture up, or rather, didn't set you up. Set it up.
Well, I always think you don't necessarily need to have the whole person in the frame to tell a picture or tell a story. You can just have that hand coming into the frame, as long as it's saying something and doing something, and it kind of adds a bit of mystery to the picture. And this picture that we're looking at now, I took in India. In fact, most of the pictures were taken in the sort of Far East. And it's in the vegetable market, and okay, there's markets everywhere, and you can kind of apply the same rules wherever you are, really. But I think the key is, or the first most important thing is find your background, because it's so easy to go into a market and be overwhelmed by, wow, there's so much going on here, and yet then you come away with very little. And I always find that the first thing really is just choose that background, make sure it's nice and solid or interesting, with not lots of sort of highlights coming out of in the background, so that you're going to be looking at the picture and staying with it. And then find an interesting subject. So in a market, you're not waiting for someone to come into your frame. You're kind of choosing that person, then staying with that person, and waiting for them to do something. And there's no harm in kind of engaging with them beforehand. I mean, this guy here, I engaged with him for a few minutes, just saying hi and how are you, in my pidgin Indian. But it attracted me, the colours and the solid backgrounds with the blue and the yellow. And I just waited there.
Kind of a technique that we can call the two worlds in this case as well, or?
Yeah, a little bit of two worlds.
Start from there.
We'll come on to sort of two worlds later, but you can, because there's definitely sort of two areas there, the yellow on the right hand side and the blue on the left hand side. That kind of attracted me as a nice backdrop, but what attracted me was the guy reading the newspaper, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, he was doing something. Number two, the newspaper was kind of acting as a reflector and just pushing light back up into the guy's face. And he was kind of talking to people, or people were passing through, but then someone came over to him and really started talking to him and having a big conversation with him, and he was kind of looking up at him sometimes, looking at his paper sometimes, and I just was waiting then for the moment where the guy would put his hand out as just as a gesture towards the guy, and then it was a case of when the guy was looking at him. So there was that perfect moment where we spoke about it the other week, where I'm talking to you, but I'm not going to be looking at your eyes the whole time because it becomes uncomfortable. So it was a case of waiting for him to be looking, and also...
So we're talking about the look and the gesture together, yeah.
So here we've got the look from one guy and the gesture from the other guy. But if you took the hand out, it's kind of just much of a nothing picture, because it's just a guy looking into a blank space, or where's he looking? But by putting that hand there, he's engaging with another person.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I like that random hand in there. I use the random hand quite a lot in my street photography, and it's a good way of filling the frame with the main subject, but just having that hand sort of coming in and doing something.
It gives you a little bit of an idea of the setting, the area where they are, the fact that there is other people around, that it's not just those three guys. It's actually quite interesting that way.
It's a real, I go to this place quite regularly when I go to India, and it's the vegetable market in Kolkata, and it's really, really busy. and I don't say anything to the people on the course initially. I just say, let's go and get some pictures, and everyone goes in there and they're almost like kids in a candy shop. You go, wow, there's so much going on here.
I remember when I was there the first time, it's
Yeah.
just the amount of people is incredible, and the amount of interesting scenes
Yeah.
is just overwhelming, as you say.
But it is overwhelming, and,
It is,
and
it
also
is.
because it's overwhelming, you then, or a lot of people don't come back with anything at all, because they're just looking around and saying, oh wow, look at that, wow, look at that. And yet the secret is, and in fact, although this is quite a large place, there's probably only 4 or 5 places that are, I would say, really good for this type of photography, because a lot of the areas, you know, there's aisles and there's people behind and people in front, and it's just too busy, there's too much going on.
Yes.
But there's a couple of areas where there are solid backgrounds, and you know, as a street photographer, go and find those backgrounds and then stay there, engage with the people a little bit if you want, because then they'll just get on with their daily life as this guy's doing, and then you're just there to take the picture when the moment happens.
Absolutely. So, moving on with the picture that we are looking a bit more at the micro composition of your picture. So this picture with the bikes, that is quite interesting for the eyes of that child in between the spokes of the
Sure.
wheel.
And micro composition, when you actually sort of say to people, what do you think micro composition is? A lot of people, they don't get it to start with, but it really is, it can be just a small movement, and that's all I mean. And it can be the difference between a photograph being great or just being, you know, one that, quite frankly, you'd put in the bin or you wouldn't look at. And this image here was taken on the streets in Myanmar a couple of years ago. And what attracted me was you know, the guys mending the bikes on the streets. And initially the little boy was to the left of the picture by the guy with the green vest. And I started taking some photographs, and I think, you know, from the dynamic of the picture, I'd worked out that the little boy that's his father in the middle. And I guess because he saw a stranger taking the photograph, he felt kind of threatened, or maybe threatened's the wrong word, but you know, maybe just you know, uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he actually,
Shy.
yeah,
That's right.
shy. That's great. Thank you. And so he actually jumped over and almost like hid himself, or put a barrier between me and him by sitting behind the wheel of the bike. And to me, then the picture actually came alive from being, you know, kind of an okay, nice picture.
But the wheel is now just framing him
Yeah.
in itself, which is creating a very
So,
interesting.
You're right,
Yeah.
absolutely framing the guy. And then also, because you know, he was the smallest character and the guy on the left was almost standing up, there was a beautiful triangle there coming down from left to right, which made the picture sort of strong. Nice background, so you can't physically get out of the picture. There's no highlights making you sort of look elsewhere. And then it was just a case of just moving the camera slightly to the left or right, up and down, just minute movements to make sure the little boy's eyes weren't obscured by one of the spokes going through it. Because if the spoke went through the eye, I personally would have binned it. You know, it just wouldn't have been as good, or certainly wouldn't have gone in my portfolio. And then the other sort of, I guess it's a bit of luck as well, but you know, the colours of the 3 people kind of go together.
Yeah.
There's a good colour palette there, and you know, you get lucky with that sort of stuff on the street. But that's what caught my eye originally, and then it was just a case of moving around a little bit to make sure that you get the perfect picture rather than just, you know, an okay picture.
Let's say what you would talk micro composition rather than composition is when you have composed your images, just starting to take care of all the small details,
Sure.
just to get them in the right places, trying to get them much easier on the eye rather than just shooting it as it is. And it's also an indication of the skill of the photographer and the awareness of the whole frame, and it's something that comes with a lot of practice.
But you still have to go through that first step that we spoke about in the previous picture,
Yeah.
in selecting your background.
Absolutely.
Because if you haven't got the right background, it's, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're composing it right or
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we just mentioned the 2 worlds, or in this case probably the 3 worlds that we are talking about. And this is actually quite interesting because we can see different groups of people, different things happening there, just completely different situations, all in the same picture. So, how did you set this one? Well, how did you set yourself up to shoot this one here?
Okay, again, this was taken on one of the photography courses that I run in India, and we were talking. There was two other photographers with me. We were talking about the composition because it was there. We walked into this square, and I could see these three little things happening. You know, there was a group of three guys, someone having their hair cut, and two little kids playing. And you know, before I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I saw the bigger picture. But I said to one of the other photographers, you know, why don't we work this scene a little bit? And it was funny. Most people's instinct would be to sort of go in and photograph the person having the shave or the haircut because there's movement there and there's something happening, so there's action to be photographed. And it's absolutely right to go and do that, and you could do that as part of a little set of pictures telling a story about a particular scene. So we did that, but then, you know, it's like, let's step back now and look at the bigger picture because there's a lot more going on in this particular scene. And quite often, you know, you do see two shops next to each other or two things happening, you know, something happening in a doorway and something happening in another room. And it adds a lot of interest to the photograph where you've got two things happening in different areas.
Yeah.
But this one, you know, I stepped back. This was done on a 35mm lens. So I was back a little bit because it's quite a wide scene. And, you know, I just took 4 or 5 pictures of the scene. But where I got really lucky was you know, not just the 3 worlds, was the lady. Yeah, you absolutely got it. Because, you know, otherwise the space on the left would have been empty and it would have been filled with just grey, where all on the right of the picture is red. But now we've got a lady walking through the scene.
And she's red as well.
And she's got a red sari on, or a red base thing. And it kind of just works. It just fills that space and it elevates the picture from kind of, you know, a good picture to, in my opinion, I really like this photograph, and I think it's got, you know, it's quite a strong photograph.
It really is a strong photograph, I agree. Moving on to another technique, let's say, or another part of the micro composition, let's say, which is heads in spaces. So this picture here is actually quite interesting because we can see, apart from all the heads that are in different spaces, and then we have 2 on the wall, which is a poster and a portrait on the wall, which add another few elements to the whole scene, which is quite interesting.
So there's a couple of things about this photograph. The first thing is, you know, there's this great quote by Robert Capa, you know, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And close enough doesn't necessarily mean getting close to someone. It can mean being in someone's presence so they're comfortable with you and you then become close to them, that they then get on with their daily life and let you photograph them naturally. And that's what happened here. In fact, both of those things happened. You know, I was with another photographer, a good friend of mine, Andy, and we were walking through Jodhpur, and you know, we'd been walking around a little while, and you know, Andy said to me, "Do you fancy a cup of tea?" So we just sat down on these benches in the marketplace, and we had no intention of actually taking photographs at this point, but we were just having a cup of tea and just having a rest. And you know, after a few minutes, this guy sat down with a newspaper, almost like, I don't know, as near as I am to you, maybe a little bit further away, but very, very close. And the thing that attracted me on the newspaper was the hand on the newspaper, but I'll come on to that a little bit later. But I suddenly had a nice composition in front of me because I had this guy really close to me, which is kind of nicer foreground interest. I had the guy in the middle, and then all I needed really was some other elements to kind of complete the frame. I actually moved back another seat to try and get a bit more of the composition, to get the bike in, to give it some context. And then I just needed to sit there and wait for other little things to happen within the context of the picture. I already had a guy on the left who was making the tea, so he was kind of there all the time. And then I just needed someone to fill that space in the middle. You're right, I got lucky. There's there's these other sort of heads in little frames dotted around, little frames in pictures that kind of add other heads in spaces.
And create quite a line of heads
Yeah.
that go all the way through the picture.
And it's kind of, I just needed to wait for this guy to walk through. But then what really caught my eye and what I really wanted to take advantage of was when the guy opened the newspaper and his hand was mirroring the hand on the newspaper. And when I saw that, I got quite excited. And generally when you're excited, you know that you've got something happening in front of you and you need to take advantage of it. And I just thought, wow. And I sort of moved the camera around a little bit, micro-composed it, so I got it absolutely spot on. And that's how this image came about. Sometimes, when I show it to a lot of people don't actually see the hand on the newspaper. And I have thought about cropping it in quite tight to take out the bike on the right hand side, so that you almost really emphasise the hand on the newspaper and the hand holding the paper. But
personally, I think that picture would lose a lot. I think that bike is a great line that leads your eye in into the picture, and the hand is actually quite visible there to see. It's just a matter of stopping for more than 2 seconds and actually study the picture, because that is the main problem we have nowadays. People don't stop and look at the picture.
Absolutely.
And
it
these
is
are pictures to be enjoyed to looking at, and it's really nice because you have so much interest in the picture itself.
The other sort of, and you'll see it with all the pictures that we've spoken about today, is one of my big mantras in street photography. And it doesn't always apply, but it applies most of the time. And I was taught it on a course 8 or 9 years ago when I went over to Dallas on a foundation workshop. Is you need to go around the front and always photograph people and see their noses. And if you can't see the nose in the face, or nose on the face, or the nose in the picture, you shouldn't be taking the picture unless you purposely want to take the picture of the back of someone.
Yeah.
If I see someone's portfolio and it's all backs or all sides, straight away you know that photographer is afraid to confront the image. Go around the front. It's going to take a little bit of I'm trying to think of the right word. Clout. I was going to say balls, but it's going to take a little bit of balls, but you're going to get a great picture.
That's exactly during the workshop I was teaching the other day. I was mentioning this thing. Please, guys, don't shoot backs. Just shoot faces, the noses, etc. Just have a look at the faces. And half of the people in the workshop just looked at me like rabbits in the headlights and said, "But it's difficult to shoot them in the face." Yes, but shooting backs doesn't really tell much.
And also shooting shooting them from behind.
Yeah,
anyone can do it.
Yeah, anyone can do it.
But go around the front, get the great image,
But also for our eyes, seeing backs, it doesn't really tell us much unless there is a very good reason to shoot that back. Well, when you start looking at the face, the nose, the expressions, etc., that's when your eye gets interested, and it's so much more powerful. So, last picture that we're looking at, and this one is shooting through things.
Yeah, I think, what I've chosen 5 images here today, but I try and use these techniques all the time on the street.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that I think you should try and mix it up a little bit is because if you try and take pictures from the same angle all the time, always from eye height or always from the waist, you're going to give the people viewing your images, they're going to get bored quite quickly.
Yeah.
You need to add variety into your images, and that could be shooting from different angles, using different techniques like we've spoken about. Having nice simple images, just of something that's on the street, and then complex images like some of the ones we've seen just here. But you need to mix it up a little bit to create interest, and one of the ways of creating interest is to shoot through, and that could be shooting through an object, it could be like a railing, it could be using a person as a frame to shoot through, to shoot another person beyond.
Yeah.
And it generally adds quite a bit of interest. And this was taken again in Kolkata, and it's a street barber. And
this isn't far from vegetable market, isn't it?
No, it's actually on the route into the vegetable market. It's a very narrow lane, And I stayed here about 20 minutes. So again, this is finding something suitable, nice solid backdrop,
And work in the picture.
and then working the picture, staying there till you get the image.
Yeah.
And you know, to start with, you know, you can see I'm really close to this guy. I mean, I'm like literally sort of
Yeah.
as close as my hand is to your face, here,
Absolutely.
Flavio. And to start with, he kind of looked at me, and you know, he's smiling away, and he gave me the victory sign, and but then, you know, after a few minutes, he can't continue to do that. He needs to get on with doing what he's meant to be doing, which is he's there to cut people's hair. So you're then going to get those better images because, you know, going back to that Kappa saying, you're then close to the subject. I'm close to him. He knows I'm there, physically close to him, but also he feels comfortable with me being there. He's not bothered anymore. He knows I'm going to be taking some pictures. You know, just get on with it. I'm going to get on with my job.
Absolutely.
And that's when the better pictures come. But I saw the people behind, and I saw him sort of cutting like this, and I just thought, you know what, if I wait to that moment where he really goes over the top with the scissors, cutting the hair, I can shoot through and I can create another level of interest. So there's two or three things going on. Yeah. So you've got two techniques going on here. You've got, or three, you've got moment, which is trumps everything in street photography. You've then got shooting through, and then by the very nature that you're shooting through, you create layers.
Yeah.
So there's three things going on here.
And I would add even a fourth, that the two faces of the people you shot through add bookends to the picture.
Yeah.
Just contain it even more.
Great point. And you know, also, you know, it's that composition, you know, micro composition again. And you know, if the guy's hand was a little bit lower going over the top, it'd be cutting into the guy's head. So you know, you maybe need to come down a little bit or move to the right a little bit, just to sort of make sure that the people behind were composed correctly in the photograph. So there's quite a lot of little techniques going on here, and you know, I've been back there 2 or 3 times, and you know, it's something, you know, when we go there, I say to people like, let's take some pictures here. Then say, right, let's bring in this, and you know, they know me there now because I've been there like 6 or 7 times. I've been to Kolkata, and you can get similar pictures and teach these sort of techniques so that the people then, when they go off by themselves elsewhere, they can go and kind of look for these sort of things, which is what it's all about, really.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, I think this brings us to an end. We really hope this, let's say, critique on your own photographs and going through the thought process and the techniques used is very helpful for you guys.
Well, next week it's going to be your turn. So
it's going to be my turn.
You're going to choose 5 images, and you're going to talk about them, and I'm going to ask you why you've done that, etc. So it's just been me today, but
yeah.
Thank you very much.
I've
for
been
listening.
very kind to you with your pictures.
Thank you, Flavio. I like it when you're kind to me.
So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you really enjoyed it. And that's it for today. Goodbye from Flavio.
And it's goodbye from Mark.
And remember to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.